Hey, welcome to Place to Contemplate, my new podcast. This is Dan speaking. Uh, I've been trying to think about what creative direction I'd like to go in, and I like being part of a communal discussion. I like learning about new things, and lately I've been really into podcasts, listening to them, that is. I feel like there's always some new interesting podcast for me to find, and I enjoy hearing people talk about things. And yesterday, I had an experience that kind of caused me to have an epiphany. I had locked myself out of my apartment, and I was trying to think up ways to get back in. For instance, would it be better to wait outside my door, hoping my roommate might come home? Or should I go to the library and try to email my landlord from there? But before I crafted a plan, I was just standing in front of my apartment hoping my roommate had just gone to the deli and would be home any minute. So I figured I'd do that for half an hour to an hour, and then if that didn't work, try something else. So I was standing in the little vestibule area of my apartment building, inside the main outer door, but before the second inner door, because I was locked out of my apartment and the front door of the building. So, but the outer door doesn't lock, only the inner door. So I was standing in the vestibule, knowing that people do leave during the day. So it could have been any minute that someone would come out and I can get in. And I was just standing there, and I realized that even though it was a 5 foot wide little room, it kind of had a nice atmosphere. I realized there's a plate glass window above the door, and the sun was streaming in through the window, and it felt like it had this church-like atmosphere. It felt like the ambience was way nicer than a kind of rundown vestibule should have been. And this is where I'm getting to the epiphany that I had. I was started to realize the types of things I might take interest in years prior that I just don't have no reason to stop and pause and look at. I remember when I first moved to New York City, that was kind of I feel like I would find more ways to kind of occupy my time when I was stuck on the train. That was still the flip phone era, and if I had to walk somewhere, I would just kind of look around. So when I was stuck in this vestibule, not stuck, but I was standing in front of the door because someone might come out, and then I would grab the door before it locked again. When I was standing there, the sun was streaming in, and it had this it felt very tranquil, and it was almost because I might have to wait there for an hour, it was I had this built-in way of passing the time. I probably developed this when I was 5, and I had to wait for my mom to try on clothes at the store, and I was just kind of there looking at stuff by myself. So I started to realize how some of the things were pretty interestingly unorthodox. There was all this information about the building in this little framed glass box that looked super old, and it had like the landlord's name and like some like regulation info and like a thing that had been signed the last time had been inspected for who knows what. But like, it was kind of fascinating that there was like this little framed glass box with like a notes taken in pencil, and like the mailboxes were like all kind of grungy, and like I thought that was interesting because it reminded me of like scenes in movies where they show some kind of like plot device, but it looks all like let's say it was like let's say it was in the movie Saw, like, and they show a mailbox, but it looks like all grimy. I feel like that was people had gotten into that profession of like I guess set design, and that their kind of like artistry might have involved just being like going around and being very aware of like the qualities of things, like what kind of mailbox is in like an apartment building, and like what color like or texture would be interesting on screen. Like I guess the kinds of things that are in a background that kind of like they make the kind of the reality that you're in, but that you don't really think about. So I like I was looking around in the vestibule, and it was like, then I was like, well, I'll just like, there's like a prop that holds open the outer door, so I was like, why stand in here like between two closed doors? Like, obviously like kick open the outer door, so I propped that open, and then like I was looking out at the street, and then I realized like from a certain point of view, like that's interesting as well, like, and the whole thing was kind of like made pleasant by the fact that it was so tranquil, because like there was no distractions and there's really nothing to do but pass time. It's almost like normally time's like passing annoyingly fast. In this case, time couldn't pass fast enough, which I think is another thing that used to always be the case before I was like further into adulthood and before everything was kind of digital and I was constantly on the go. I feel like that kind of like maybe you have like you have like a boring summer afternoon and it feels like time's never gonna pass. I feel like that really kind of like nurtured creativity, and I feel like it kind of made it a little more satisfying because it had this like kind of emotional purpose. So, as I was saying, like all these kind of observations were kind of like seemed especially good because of the tranquility and just the general vibe of it. It was like I was like just trying out this like completely alternate experience from my normally structured day, and it seemed like nice, even though I know that the things I'm listing are like pretty mundane details. So I was like looking around, and the reason why I say this was like an epiphany is like I felt this lack of like a creative avenue for me, and I find that like to be a very important thing to me, like it always has been, but I haven't really had like a strong like direction lately, like, oh, I definitely want to do this. So like, but I have been like listening to podcasts and reading. I like to read a lot, and it's kind of like like to expose myself to things, and that's kind of my creativity, but it always feels a little guilty because it's like a um it kind of seems like a cop out, like that I kind of consume things, but I don't kind of like make things. I mean, even though that's almost kind of a, like, looking at it kind of existentially, it's like, what difference does it make whether I make things or just like look at things? I don't know that I care that much, but I do kind of feel this, like, that it's a cop out if I don't go further, and it's almost like things are creativity and kind of self-reflection. I feel like is a lot enhanced by kind of participating, and I think like creativity gives me a way to like kind of stick my neck out and be in like a more of like risky territory in order to engage or just to be showing my stuff. And I feel like if I'm not sticking my neck out in that way, that I kind of feel like I'm missing out. So when I was stuck in the vestibule, the epiphany was like, I'll just do a podcast about this, about what I'm experiencing right now, which is like observing things and seeing things kind of anew and kind of reflecting about myself. Like I'm having this experience where I'm stuck in a vestibule, and I can relate that to people, and it's almost like a journal entry. And I was like kind of like thinking, oh man, is anyone going to come? When are they going to come? I wish I had my phone on me because I didn't have my phone. And then I was like kind of like standing half in the vestibule and half like on the stoop, and I noticed like, I think this is really what brought me back, is I noticed like I could kind of like center my reflection in the doorknob so that I could see like a little dude centered on the doorknob, and I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. I wish I had my camera to take a picture. And then I think that was what brought me back, is like, that's really like the type of games that a kid would play, is like I remember like I would like look at my reflection and like the knobs on the dresser across the bedroom and like see how you could like shift it by like changing your position. And I was like like kind of like amused that even seemed interesting to me, because it's like, oh, that's so like kid like that it's almost like more like inventive than the whatever like kind of stuff that I fall into now, with like having everything at my disposal and everything digital. So I was like, oh, that's like a really cool image with the doorknob. Like, maybe I could just remember it and like paint it or something. So, but then I was like, wait a minute, like this whole like observation is kind of interesting in and of itself. Maybe like I could make a podcast just like about this kind of like intersection of creativity and observation. And then I was like, that could actually work, because although I really enjoy podcasts as a format and I like listening to them, I felt like I didn't want to go into the interview format. I felt like I didn't really have a focus, like like if I was gonna like go into like a podcast saying like, who am I? I'm a writer, and I've written these things, and I write about this thing, and the show's on this topic, and we're gonna have people talk about this topic. That's kind of the stuff that I like to listen to, and I almost feel a little bit like I wish like I had that kind of focus. But the other thing I've noticed is that there's like especially now with the pandemic, there's like so much podcast content out there that I feel like it doesn't matter. I feel like doesn't matter what you do on your podcast, like there's just so many types of podcasts and types of things that people like. There's so many fandoms and communities that I don't think my podcast where I just reflect on things is that impractical, because people have been telling me like, yeah, just if you want to make online content, just kind of throw it out there. Like maybe some people will find it and be like, I like this, or if not even that, then at least your friends will check it out. And I was still kind of like, I don't know. I want to like have this real concerted effort, and I want to have like the whole thing branded with a cool name, and I want to have like the bookmarks come out like before the podcast even comes out. But uh, another thing with my creativity is I kind of like spontaneity and I like experimenting. So as I kind of started seeing this idea like kind of coming together, the different aspects of me and my creativity kind of started aligning, and I was like, oh, I could like see this. I could see myself doing this. And that's another thing with my artwork is like whenever the kind of stream has started flowing, it's always like something that's kind of more practical for me to do, like, oh, that's right in my skill level, like it feels natural to do, and I feel like that's something that excites me to create. So here we are. I decided I want to do a podcast, and I think I'm going to call it Place to Contemplate, because I already used that phrase for my website, so that aligns perfectly. Because that was kind of like, I kind of left my website open-ended, because I was like, oh, what is this going to be, like an art portfolio or like some other thing? I'll just leave it open to like whatever I experiment with, and I guess part of my experimenting is like thinking, and contemplating, so Place to Contemplate. That's now this podcast. So I've kind of already outlined the concept, but I think it's going to be kind of like journal entry type, like reflections. I might write like some kind of like segments and have some topical discussions. What I want to avoid is kind of like a surface level, like griping about stuff, like in a kind of like Seinfeldian, like, what's the deal with this? Like, I don't want to fall into that, and I don't want to go have any like maybe I'll talk about politics or whatever, but I don't want to have it be like a kind of Rush Limbaugh style rant. So I want this to be about kind of exploratory things, or things that are kind of just on the verge of being, because I felt kind of like stuck in my creativity lately. It's interesting, like I like learning about digital platforms and apps and equipment, because without doing that I kind of feel limited. But at the same time, it's like it does kind of become a little bit of like a set like way of creating. It's almost like like where you have like when you had like an old video game, like let's say like a Mario Paint or something, where it's like very set in the tools that you have, and then you kind of master all the tools, and then you kind of get a little bit bored with it. So I'd like to have an open-endedness on this podcast and not relegate it to any specific focus. Like the focus is creativity and self-reflection and like wellness. That's another thing that I like to listen to podcasts about, and I like that there's like a burgeoning community of that. So like I'll probably delve into like some reflections on things that I find helpful, or the types of things that kind of hold me up, like the types of things I'll talk to friends about, things that just trip you up emotionally, or things you're kind of, maybe things from my past that are kind of still lingering around, or things I want to kind of get past, but with like a kind of like a wellness, like a kind of deliberately kind of wellness um, focus. So I think that's what this podcast will be, and then maybe some topical things, and interviews would be awesome. Like if you're listening to this and you feel like there's something that you want to talk to me about on a podcast, that would be cool. Um, could be like book review, like aforementioned wellness ideas. Like, I keep trying to avoid saying meditation because I don't actually meditate, but things that are kind of like an active, like daily process that pertains to like psychological well-being. I feel like I'd like to discuss those kind of things. And creativity, music, and just like self-reflection, like, hey, I noticed this. That kind of thing. Yeah, so I'll just leave it open-ended. I do have some experience with podcasts from like a while back. I had a podcast called My Toenails Are Getting Too Long and They're Ripping Through My Sock. And it figured out to like 6 episodes that I did it over like 1 or 2 years. I did it like every 3 months or so. And that was kind of like a music-based podcast where I'd just find songs that I like and I played them, and I'd kind of like riff on that. I'd be like, that song kicked ass. And then I think I did some like spoof interviews where I pretended I had like a singer on the show. And that was a fun project. But it was like kind of like a regular radio show format. And it did kind of go into these kind of like departures of thought. Like I thought, like I just explained that this podcast would be about, like I would delve into the abstract between the music. But yeah, so like I did the 6 episodes and I was like, that was a pretty good run, and I kind of closed up shop and focused on the other stuff that I wanted to work on. So I feel like that's another thing that could maybe be a segment on this show, is like a reckoning with that, with the My Toenails podcast. If anything comes up, if there's anything I want to revisit, if there's anything fans want to revisit, that could be part of this. And kind of like, as I think about it some more, almost kind of be like this homage to like human experience or different experiences. Maybe I could like interview you and we'll just talk about like talk about kind of things like my experience where I was waiting in my apartment vestibule and I realized that I had this way of passing time by looking at things visually and like making a little game out of my reflection in the doorknob. Like maybe you have some of these like ways of passing time, or you have this thing where you're like, oh, I always did this, and I wonder if anyone else does that. That's another thing I like about what I've been so far describing as like the podcast world. I guess it's also just the digital world in general. Like, I think this is another thing I like about the digital world in general, is there's all this like stuff that I can kind of like different headspaces where I could kind of like see what other people's lives are like. Like I can watch like video blogs, and like I was watching stuff about what it's like to be autistic. I was watching a video blog about someone who transitioned in gender and then detransitioned back to their original gender, and they were like just sharing their experiences with that and their experiences being themselves in the world. And I think these kinds of things are interesting, and I'd like to kind of pay homage to them. Like I remember a friend saying that she like just doesn't understand music, because I was a big music fan, and I sent her a song and she was just like, I don't get it. And then she was like, yeah, I just never really was that big on music, which I was like a surprise to me. And then she was like, she said like her favorite song was something where like it was a particular song that the drum beat reminded her of when she would like ride in the car as a kid, and the like I guess the something about the noise rushing through the windows or something, the airflow had a particular pattern, and the drum beat in the song reminded her of that, so that she like felt that she got that song, but like kind of conventional music on the whole she didn't get. And it's just like interesting to me that we have these like, although we're all kind of the same, we have these like shifts in like how we experience things. And I'd like to discuss that kind of thing with people, but I don't know I don't know how like substantial that could, I don't know like if I could get that up to a substantial degree like that quickly. Like maybe if I keep doing this, like I could kind of phase that in, but it seems like maybe I'll just start by talking about myself, and maybe like talking about some news that's on the internet or something that I just want to think about out loud or respond to. If I get any response to this, then I can respond to that on another podcast. And the other thing is, I think my other reservation with the podcast was like, oh, that seems like legit. Like I need like a particular schedule, and I need to be on all the social networks, and like why was I inventing all these rules for myself? Like I could just try out something. Like I was like, oh, podcasting seems so serious. Like everyone who has a podcast has like one of those microphones that for some reason like suspends on like little bungee cords, because apparently like the microphone can't touch a solid surface or something. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want a physically suspended microphone like that. So that was kind of holding me back. But I'm thinking like, now that I've kind of delved more into the video bloggers and like the people talking about their transition, and I think like I could maybe get this going. And you're welcome to help me out with ideas. So yeah, and the other thing is, it's not going to be a set schedule. I think it'll just kind of be like my audio diaries, and like if I need to change a name, that's fine. If I want to start using a pseudonym, I might do that. I might change the logo, might change the platform where you find it, etc. And maybe like throughout this exploratory process, I'll kind of find a particular focus. Like maybe I'll be like, either two things. Maybe I'll never do this again. Maybe I'll do like 2 more episodes. Or maybe I'll cap it off at 6 episodes like I did my previous podcast. Or maybe it'll kind of like flow to a particular like direction. And then I'll be looking back at this podcast where I talked about my reflection in a brass dome on a doorknob. and we'll be like, man, what was he talking about?